All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Imperial Advisor episode 9. We're down in Andy tonight. He's in Seoul. Hopefully, not under any nuclear threat. There's just a little bit of news to cover this week, so some things may have slipped through the cracks. Yeah, exactly. Blame the ninjas. So we've got I think the official term is a butt ton of stuff to cover tonight. And we've got some unicorn stuff. Scorpion cards just came out about a couple of hours before we were planning this. We've got fiction from Scorpion and Unicorn, as well as the Gen Con story fiction. And then obviously there's also stuff. We've got a Facebook messaging group amongst us, and I think about 3 days after our last episode, we said we could actually have another 3 hour long episode with just the news that came out in those couple of days. We've got the organized play information. We can talk about single core set environment. We can talk about the launch program. And I don't think we're going to get to the L5R Honored event. Maybe something to talk about post Gen Con, but there's that as well. So, let's just dive into it. I think is the best solution to so much news is start talking about it. So let's talk Unicorn. And I wonder if before we get into cards, we can just say a little word on the story. I think it was one of the more interesting bits of fiction. The Curved Sword story. Owen, what did you take from that? It was a little while ago, at least in terms of volume of news that's passed since then.
So, the Unicorn story was really good. It was a lot about the outsider status of the Unicorn. And the fact is that originally, in the original Clan War stories, the Scorpion Clan coup stories, the Unicorn didn't really have a narrative hook. They were there, they were riding horses, and I guess Thunder of Hooves, they would show up and, look, it's the Unicorn, they just arrived. And that was kind of it. Whereas they've actually committed them to these are the outsider clan. In this one, they aren't exactly like everybody else. And that's been reflected in the story now, which is nice to see. And it's also reflected in the mechanics. So, that's all a good thing. And they've brought in a very new clan champion because Shinjo Yukatsu was kind of very bleh, and then it turned out he was a call-out master, and then that was about the fact that he was a call-out master. And instead, they've put in a new champion who was front and center for the clan. And so that's all to the good.
Baz, Justin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I again, what Owen said, I really liked the idea that the Unicorn represented a vision of Rokugan's future, or at least that's the way they saw themselves, and that, come hell or high water, that they were going to, bring Rokugan kicking and screaming into, a future of some kind, or at least, move Rokugan out of the kind of stultified and stuffy ritual that it's been apparently wallowing in for several hundred years. So yeah, no, it's, and as Owen said, like it's a very specific and unique story hook for the Unicorn, which they desperately lacked in the original Clan Wars and Scorpion Clan coup storylines. So all in all, just a huge success, I think, and it was a very interesting story to read. So thumbs up all the way.
Yep. Anything to add, Baz?
No, not much. I agree with everything was said already. I have to admit, I started into the Unicorn story going, I'll just get the story out of the way, because Unicorn haven't really been a big factor for me, but I really enjoyed it at the end, so it did a really good job.
Cool. We're going to try and keep things moving with all the stuff to cover. So we'd love to go deeper on story, but we're probably going to try and keep it shorter tonight than we usually would in the past. Okay, so jumping into cards, we'll do a quick overview of, let's maybe just run through sort of the key cards and the Dynasty. We can take a break, chat about some standout cards from that. Then we'll do the same for Conflict, and then we'll move on to Scorpion. Okay, so I'll do a quick run through, and then maybe Baz, you can pick out some highlights that you found.
Sure, can do.
And quick shout out while on the topic that Baz has written some really brilliant write-ups on the Imperial Advisor website on each of the clans, and on his Medium site there's some really good starter deck lists if people are sort of want something to get going.
So I write them up on Medium first, but the starter deck list will get put up tonight on Imperial Advisor. So we'll get them all up there. Yeah,
it's really good for people who just want to have something to dive into without the deck building aspect, with some of the thinking done for them. So Golden Plains Outpost, a plus. Ooh, someone's got someone at the door.
Yeah, sorry.
You should have kept them muted.
Yeah, a +0 strength stronghold, interestingly, and a 10 starting honor and +7 influence and +10 influence and 7 fate, as we've seen previously. During a military conflict by the stronghold, choose a cavalry character you control and move it to that conflict. And I think movement tricks will be a theme we see quite a bit of. And another obviously key, Shinjo Altansarnai, 5 fate 5/4, the champ. Reaction: when you break a province during military, in which this character is participating, your opponent choose a character he or she controls, discard that character. Be very interested to hear your guys' views on her. Then a province that was one of the first we've seen, and I think we've seen the strength of it. 2 province strength, Endless Plains. Break this province, discard one of the attacking characters. Aggressive Moto, we've only got quite a blurry image for this guy, but a 3/0 for 2, 0 glory. Bushi Cavalry cannot defend. Border Rider, 2/1 for 2. Bushi Cavalry action, ready this character. Very solid. Giver of Gifts, 3 fate 2/3, 2 glory. Courtier, and I've seen a few courtiers for Unicorn. Action, choose an attachment you control, move that attachment to an eligible character you control. The E-Day Trader, a 1/3 for 3, another courtier. Reaction, after one or more characters move to a conflict in which this character is participating. Select one, gain 1 fate, or draw 1 card once per conflict. The Meishodo Wielder, 2/2 for 2. A Shigenja, reduce the cost of this character by 1 while you are the first player. And another of the themes we've seen is that first player theme. Then the Beastly Moto Horde, a 6- for 4 fate. Bushi Army trait, which is kind of interesting, and Cavalry. No attachments except weapon. And last few. A 2/0 for 1 Moto Youth, Bushi Cavalry. This character gets +1 during the first military conflict each round. The Shinjo Outrider, 2/2 for 2, 2 glory, all the 2s. 4 little ducks. Action, during conflict, move this character to the conflict. Shinjo Tatsuo, a 3/3 for 4, Bushi Cavalry Scout. During conflict, choose this character and up to 1 other character you control. Move those characters to the conflict. And last, 2 more actually. A 0/0 for 1 Utaku Infantry, a Bushi. While this character is participating in a character, it gets +1/+1 for each participating Unicorn character you control. And then the lovely art on Warrior Poet, a 2/2 for 3, Bushi Cavalry. While this character is participating in a conflict, each participating character controlled by your opponent gets -1/-1 until the end of the conflict. So that was a very fast run through of the stable of characters. Excuse the pun. Don't. So what stood out to you, Baz, of those themes, of those characters? Who do you fear hitting the table across from you?
Well, I think the most important thing is the move this character into the conflict. You can see that across several of the characters and on the stronghold itself, and that's kind of the main punch, the main point of the unicorn, from what I can see. Interestingly, they don't have anything that moves them out. So all the movement is in. So you're looking at assigning an attacker as a unicorn, and you'll have to assign at least one attacker. There's no way to declare a conflict without having an attacker. And then you're going to leave as many of your characters outside as you can. And if you need to start moving them in, you can. That puts your opponent in a bit of a dilemma. They really, really, really need to defend. But to defend, how much do you put in? If you overcommit, then the unicorn player doesn't bring anything in at all. They'll lose the battle, but essentially you're gonna end up bowing out a bunch of people. So, but if you undercommit, then you're gonna lose the province. So it's a tricky dilemma, and I think that is the majority of what the unicorn seem to do. The rest of the abilities, the rest of the actions are kind of around force and having it. They're kind of bonuses for being in the first attacking. There are bonuses for there are actions that kind of will add more punch there. I think one of the kind of tremendous ones that you do see, it comes from the action side, where you're getting the cavalry reserves, which late game you're paying 3 fate and you're dropping in 6 fate worth of cavalry from your discard. So to an extent they are quite simple, and I think that maybe is going to be a bit of a problem for them, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of trickery. There's just a lot of force. A lot of it seems to be focused on the military side of things rather than the political side of things. And that last battle, I think they're gonna maybe have a few problems, unless they draw the right cards to turn it around. I like them a lot, though. They're a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, it struck me a little bit as, there's not a lot of trickery other than moving, but they sort of seem very well set up to just crush provinces a little bit. Just, well statted, nice abilities, nice actions, and potentially more so than any other clan, ability to sort of be a real blitz deck. Owen, have you had much experience with them?
Yeah, I played a little bit with them, and I'll just say this: I'm really glad Cavalry Reserves doesn't work with Otaku Infantry, because that card, because it gets up to 6 printed cost worth of guys, the one costers do tremendous value with it. And even more importantly, if you could bring out 3 Otaku Infantry and even 2 other guys, or even 2 Otaku Infantry, 3 other guys, with that, you'll almost auto-win that battle. It's just such... 3 fate is an enormous cost for a card. But it can be massive. It can be massive at turning a battle and making it basically so you're almost when you're going to that last province, you're almost unbeatable when you play one of those. But it's super expensive, so that at least evens things out a bit.
Yeah, and Justin, what were your thoughts on the Stronghold and the Champion?
Stronghold.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Stronghold
go ahead, Owen.
is very, very, very flexible and allows you to do a lot of, I will attack with one guy and let's see what you do. And it means you don't have to overcommit on your attacks at all, which is pretty massive. Because it means you can make a decision about, okay, I want to see what you do when I attack. And that's extra information to build your choices on. So it replicates a little bit of how old Cavalry used to work. That I get a preview of your defense before I choose to attack. And they've got a ton of movement tricks, which is good. I can see sometimes some turns you'll be like, I have too many movement tricks this turn, or I don't have enough movement tricks this turn. And I can see both of those things happening, but I like a lot of Stronghold. And critically, it's +0 on the province strength, and I think they have no holding. So they've made a very clear decision about Unicorn that they're all offense, no defense. They are going to beat you by beating you faster. They're not going to win by defending. And that's interesting.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit maybe of Lion in terms of how they looked when we first saw them, and then when we played them, realizing that all-out attacking nature could be its downfall at times. Justin, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, focusing on essentially like a mono-military deck, almost ignoring the political side of things, has been certainly shown to be a really risky proposition in the environment when you've got both Crane and Phoenix with Kuroi Mori, who will both be probably fairly popular clans. I mean, because with Crane's balanced conflict numbers, they will simply break provinces at twice the rate you're capable of, especially with their stronghold, which gives them almost complete domination against politically weak clans. So if you are like a mono-military clan going up against Crane, you will probably lose the game turn 3 to Crane breaking your stronghold, especially if you're Unicorn and +0. The stronghold itself is incredibly flexible. It's almost like having an additional personality, almost. And there are all kinds of little tricks you can pull off with it as well, like moving bowed personalities into military conflicts just as a defender to save yourself a point of honor. Because being dishonored out was another thing in the few games we played with Unicorn that we found they really had a hard time with. They tend to drop quite quickly, and they don't have a lot of means for getting it back. So yeah, anything that helps them in regards to dishonor is probably is a good thing. But yeah, overall, very, very aggressive. And the modeling that they've done with how Unicorn are able to react and outmaneuver and apply very specific amounts of pressure and force at essentially at whim, at choice. It's a good modeling of Cavalry, and I think there'll be quite an interesting little sub game with Unicorn that involves absolutely maximizing your movement in terms of producing pressure and forcing your opponent into suboptimal plays and difficult decisions. So yeah, they're very, as I said, potently aggressive, but not without some significant weaknesses which can be exploited. So they're interesting.
Speaking of weaknesses, I think this is time for the trigger warning. Captive audience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I've slightly come down off my rant. I'm not quite as livid about the card as I was. I still don't. When we get to the conflict cards, well, there it is. But when we get to the conflict cards, I'll describe exactly why I think this card is actually not that good from a design point of view, despite the fact that when you take a look at the way that Unicorn are built and designed as a highly aggressive military-focused clan, it is almost a requirement, given how weak they are politically. Because at least with the line, you have the option of building a political deck. I don't know why you'd want to build a political deck as Unicorn. Their political characters just really aren't that impressive. And they just don't carry enough of a weight to really be a credible threat in a lot of conflicts. But yeah, they're a really interesting clan. They're a really interesting clan. If they get you behind the 8-ball, you're really going to feel it. But from what we've played, they also have a tendency to just peter out and completely collapse. So they're, as I said, interesting. So
and worth mentioning Alton Sernai. We haven't talked about her. I mean, I think
oh yeah.
We've seen that discard is a very potent effect in this game. It's a pretty rare one as well. Baz, have you seen many games where with her on the board?
So yeah, I've played a few games with her, and in each of the occasions, she didn't trigger. It is take a province. It has to be military. You have to destroy the province. There are a bundle of ways where that can not be great. Or that can be stopped. On top of that, your opponent is getting to choose what character you're getting to discard. So obviously the dream scenario is you attack, you assassin, pop a couple of assassinations on some targets, you drop a
fallen in battle.
Yes, a fallen in battle to take out whichever character actually is defending. So because you're going to be bowed, you don't really want your opponent to take them out, and then kind of really reduce your opponent's options. So Altan Sarnai has been pretty terrifying when she hits the board, but she still has to do something. And she's not as scary as I thought. I think she's really good. She does work well within the deck. Obviously, she's cavalry, and she's got decent military, which ticks the boxes. Her stats 5-4 with 2 glory, not great, especially because when to actually get that ability to trigger, you need to be winning already, and she's a win more. It may have been the fact that when I was playing her, I wasn't in that position. I'm sure when I'm facing against her and she's crushing my provinces, I'll feel slightly different. But I think she's got a nice balance of scary, but not dominating and not overwhelming. So I actually quite like the design they've got with her. I'm not going to rate her up with some of the best champions because I don't think her appearing on the board is going to be a massive change. But I do think if you're in a winning position and you get her, you might have just won the game.
All right.
She's a good early buy. Earlier she comes out in the game, the better she is. Late in the game, she doesn't do a huge amount. So earlier, the better.
Yeah, she's a low floor, high ceiling champion. Again, Baz and I played a few games where she came out and she really did very little in those games. But I think that's also a symptom of single core, because we were playing single core games where you just have a bevy of 1-cost spuds that you're throwing out on the table. So even if she does come through and break a province, so like you're throwing away a Seppin Guardsman or an Atomo Courtier and not really caring.
Yeah,
I think she'll be far more terrifying in Constructed, where people aren't playing those junky personalities, and where, you know, investment into personalities is, you know, you're investing into more expensive personalities, and if she gets loose in that kind of situation, then she could easily roll a game up in a single turn. You know, as I said, as Baz was saying, like assassinate a 2-cost, she rolls through, breaks a province, kills a 3-cost, and that could be the game done right there. So, as I said, low floor, high ceiling.
Okay. All right. Maybe we'll move on to conflict then, and there's not too many, so maybe we'll just do them one by one. We've talked about a few of them a little bit already. So, Born in War, 2 fate plus X plus 0, with X being the number of unclaimed rings. So I know there's a bit of discussion about how good this is early. This clearly, you know, as a first conflict, and Unicorn are going to want to be going first, can have a pretty big impact with it petering off as the game progresses. Justin?
It's an
Yeah,
awful...
this is.
Sorry. I saw
ahead.
Justin lighting up, and then so I went for him.
It's
And
an
then Owen's
awful
in
lot
there.
of a fate for a lot of plus military, potentially, but also possibly not a lot of plus military.
Yeah, it's the military version of Hida Fashion.
Yeah,
is basically what it is, without the ridiculously over asked about attaching condition.
Instead, this has an even worse attaching condition. It's one influence, but no one else can play it except Unicorn.
But Unicorn, pretty much, yeah. So yeah, I mean, cavalry character only. I'm not sure why they would have that restriction in, but there might be a good one that I'm just not aware of. But yeah, I mean, in the first conflict, it's going to be +4. Is it going to be? It is going to be +4 because there's a specific state. Yeah. So in the first conflict, it's going to be +4 military. It's terrifying when it hits the table. Absolutely terrifying. And again, if you've got someone like Altan Sarnai as well, this can be the thing that puts her over the top. And if you're talking about things like Fallen in Battle, then a Born in War, Fallen in Battle turn, and with Altan Sarnai, can completely destroy your opponent's board. So it's really, really scary. But that said, it is a 2 fate cost attachment that gives you a diminishing military bonus as the turn goes on. Yeah. So,
and there's a good reason why it's a diminishing bonus, because with the gift giver, any weapons you drop anywhere are going to get moved over. So on the first attack, it's going to be 4. By time they get to make a second defend that military attack coming back, they could move it over again and it'll still be 3, which is still pretty tremendous. Like, you're getting 7 force out in a turn. Or if, someone gets bowed, so they're not contributing, again, that gift giver is able to move it around. So any attachments, any items that you can kind of get down are working double duty just because of the giver of gifts.
Yep.
I honestly would prefer to play Sashimono and Unicorn than this, because I think you get more value out of Sashimono.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. But that said, it's still a huge bonus that can get moved around, like Baz is saying, getting double duty. So, I mean, and once you hit constructed, and once you've got a situation where you do have your 3 captive audiences, I mean, you could be putting on absolutely unbearable pressure in the first couple of turns, where you are attacking with upwards of 10 military force. So it's it's decent,
Yep.
But whether or not it'll be staple, it's another thing.
It's solid force, but it's not tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to something that I think may well be a staple. 0 cost event breakthrough. Reaction after the resolution of your first conflict phase. This phase, as an attacking player, if your conflict broke a province, immediately declare your second conflict for this phase. Baz, you were shaking your head a little bit there.
Yeah, I got one opportunity to play it. So I've been playing some single core, and after playing the card, I realized that I didn't want to play it after all. I didn't want to attack. It's just the conditions. Like, you have to get in a situation where, you've made your successful attack. It did break a province, which is a condition. It's not always guaranteed. And then you want to go in for a second attack. And with the Unicorn, unless you have that captive audience, you're going to be going into a political attack, which isn't optimal. I think, I don't know, that does, and even if you're doing that, why aren't you just waiting until your opponent declares their attack, they bow out some cards, and then you attack? There is a kind of a scenario where your opponent has a bunch of actions that they want to play between conflicts. And when you play breakthrough, you will go straight back into another declaration. So there's no opportunity for people to play actions, to straighten their characters, to drop more attachments or any shenanigans like that. It is just straight back into the other conflict. What that situation is, what actions you're going to be stopping, I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, I'm not seeing this yet. I can't.
And then it's going to play them after your second.
Yeah.
So some interesting comments on chat. One is that it's sort of a complicated way of the Phoenix most of the time. Sneaky saying ring denial is one of the best ways to use it. Or perhaps it's a bit win more.
Way of the Phoenix, worst way.
Owen, did you have any thoughts on breakthrough?
It's okay. It's really into their tempo sort of thing. It's actually, this is the card that sort of allows you to do what you used to do in the old game, which is split for 2 provinces. That's what this card does. It lets you potentially win in your first conflict. Now, it's very unlikely you can do that, but it does allow you to go, I'm going to take your province, and now I'm going to try and take your stronghold. And there is probably some value in that, but I think it's a super conditional card. There may be some value to going, right, this turn I really need to get Void and Water. I'm going to use this card to get both. But yeah, I'm not super convinced by it. I understand kind of what you use it to do, but yeah, it's not amazing. But I don't think it can be amazing because it's such a potentially big tempo card. If it had any other rider or anything that like it'll straighten the guy or something like that, I think it'd be way too good. So yeah, I think it is what it is.
So I think if it didn't have a requirement of breaking the province, that you would be able to play it a lot more with kind of messing around at rings and doing stuff like that. But I think the fact that it has that condition, like, you can't rely on being able to play it. So you're not able to set up any plays. You're just trying to break a province. And if the situation arises where you do break the province, you're not always going to want to play this. I think it's a fantastic card to have in the card pool, and I think it will be useful in the future. But I don't think we're ready for it yet.
All right, I'm gonna move on to a card we've talked about quite a bit already. I have to say I do love this thematically. Zero cost event, captive audience. During a political conflict, lose 1 honor, change the conflict type to military. Justin, you sort of spoke about this a little bit. It's obviously also a 3 influence. Do you want to sort of?
Yeah, sure. Okay, well,
more depth.
a 3 influence. Obviously, it's one of the defining cards for Unicorn, and it's a card that most notably Lion Swarm will also look at because, as we've talked about already, those kind of mono military decks tend to lose quite badly to more balanced, aggressive decks like Crane, and also to cards like Kure Mori. So it's obviously, that this is an antidote to those particular problems. Now, the issues I do have with this card are really more kind of design issues than playability issues. So the thing to be noted is basically what Unicorn are supposed to be doing, and Unicorn are, at least from the cards we've seen, slated as the Blitz military clan. So if they are a Blitz military clan, then and that is a cornerstone of the metagame, then that is something you will have to be able to defend against. Reliably. You have to be able to reliably defend against Blitz military, because if you can't, you will simply get run down, and there's not a lot you can do about it, because that's the way Blitz decks work. So a card like this in a clan that is built around that archetype basically invalidates or puts a serious dent in the playability and viability of any Dash military personality. And from a design point of view, that's not a great thing. Because if the Unicorn do turn into a clan that is very effective at attacking early, if your opening draw, nets you a couple of guys with Dash military, that can just lose you the game, because you'll get into a conflict, they'll play this, and that's it, you're done. So from that point of view, I'm not a huge fan of this card. But that said, it fits perfectly within the Unicorn's archetype. And is in fact a necessary card for the Unicorn, given how heavily they do skew toward military. So I'm a little bit conflicted on it. It could be that my concerns will not materialize at all, and Lord knows that's happened enough in the past. But it's just one of those things. It's one of those cards you look at and go, well, what are the actual implications for this generally across the environment if Unicorn do what Unicorn are meant to do? Apart from that, though, this is an absolutely amazing card. And it allows you to turn off potentially a whole bunch of your opponent's cards, because they will commit their defense to a conflict expecting to be able to play their court games or character abilities that rely on being in a political conflict, like Shoju, for example. All of a sudden they find themselves in a military conflict. You've probably created a huge swing in terms of stats. You've turned off a bunch of abilities, and it can be just it'll win you a conflict. It'll win you a conflict. It'll break a province. It'll take a ring. And it's also worth noting this has significant defensive capabilities as well. If you have entrenched position on your stronghold, you can be guaranteed that your opponent will essentially have to break a 10 strength province on attack if they want to break your stronghold. And given the +0 on the Unicorn stronghold, that is not to be sniffed at. So overall, a superb card that potentially has some unwelcome ramifications for the viability of Dash military personalities in the metagame. So that's it. That is my summary.
Although just on that, just when we were talking about it, it did occur to me, especially with the new Scorpion releases, which we'll talk about soon. The major clans for politics are essentially Scorpion and Crane, and Crane have Voice of Honor, and the Scorpion have an equivalent card, both which can shut down captive audience. So that Unicorn player can charge into a political conflict, super confident that they're going to be able to switch it. And the political clans are just like, no. Today we're making origami Crane. Sit the hell down.
But I mean, that introduces
that
another
sort of
that
way.
introduces another problem. That I mean, all that does is exacerbate draw variance. You know, if the unicorn player draws their captive audience and the scorpion or crane player doesn't draw their defensive stuff, then well. But if the crane player does, then it's a blowout in the other direction. You know, again, it's just absolutely. It's the way card games are, but
there are ways to minimize it. Yeah, and these are incredibly powerful cards. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a little deflating to see cards of this power that can have completely decisive effects, and their decisiveness is determined basically on who draws what. You know, there's not a lot of play involved, or because there's no playing around. So it's but I absolutely take your point that the two clans likely most affected do have defenses against it, and Phoenix are actually just very, very strong defensively anyway, so they'll be fine. But yeah, absolutely.
And actually, for Phoenix, it works quite well. You drop your pacifisms, and then you're like, captive audience, see ya.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, Unicorn love pacifism. Pacifier champion, captive audience, get out.
Oh, that's horrible. Pacifying elves, aren't I? Okay.
Yeah, she's even more prone to it than Quesada, really, which is saying something.
Owen, do you want to jump in on captive audience?
Yeah, just one or two really quick other things I'd throw in about it. It's weird because this card is actually good against certain board states of Lion and Crab, because Crab and Lion both have powerful zip military guys, and this card means you can attack. Let's say you've got like a courtier and the Moto Horde. You can go politics attack with the courtier. The zip military or the zip politics guys can't defend. You can swap it to military and then use your box to move in the Moto Horde. And that's kind of massive, because that means that you can hugely influence the board. You can influence the board just by having this. And this card, secondly, is going to be when you're playing in a tournament. If you're playing Lion or Crab or some Conquest heavy deck, the question about whether you're influencing in Unicorn or not is going to be preying on the other guy's mind, because they're like, does he have a captive audience? Because one of the things is not a lot of the Unicorn cards are brilliant to influence in. There's one or two, but most of them aren't. And the fact is that one there, just being potentially in your hand, is going to wreck people's head, because they're going to be sitting there waiting to see if that happens and trying to figure out, like, oh, did he play a dragon card yet? If he played a dragon card, I can relax. But if he doesn't have to assume he's got tactics.
Should this card have a cost bigger than 0?
1 honor, I think, would balance it out. If you lost 1 honor when you played it, you would.
Yeah. I mean, arguably it should, but if it's been through playtest and it's been deemed that 0 is fine, like there's a huge gulf between 0 and 1 cost, and if 0 cost has been deemed fine, then it probably is. But it's just it's a defining card that has a huge number of ramifications, and not all of them are really good. But
yeah,
it's one of the defining cards of the environment.
To an extent, we're looking at awesome cards and we're freaking out because this is the first
because
week
we don't play Unicorn.
And that's one reason. But I think I really calmed down about the Unicorn cards after the Scorpion cards came out. So I'm sure once the first Dynasty pack, I'll be a lot cooler about the core set.
All right, another card we've talked about a little bit. A 3-cost event, Cavalry Reserves. During a military conflict, choose up to 6 printed costs where the cavalry characters in your Dynasty discard pile, put those characters into play in the conflict. Clearly, another very powerful card potentially.
Yeah.
Also, do you see this being splashed alongside Captive Audience if you are taking Unicorn?
No.
Cavalry
characters.
There's a big word in bold there that I seem to have not read.
Yeah, this is another card that, Unicorn as the Blitz military clan, this is a genuine heavyweight finisher. Like, this is, your ultimate finishing move. which is not necessarily something you want to see Blitz military clans having, because the weakness they're supposed to have is, going completely gonzo in the first couple of turns and then losing board or losing control and just falling away. And this is a card which means that the Blitz military clan can smash down your first few provinces, lose board a bit, and then, a turn or two later drop down a metric ton of force into a battle for pretty cheap. So yeah, I mean, 3 is very expensive, but you're getting 6 out of it. And I suppose the big thing with this is the opportunity cost, is that this card is not playable until the late game. So that's really why it's so cheaply costed, I think.
Yeah. Although there are going to be those stories of that poor player who's sitting opposite the unicorn, and that unicorn player ditches everything in his provinces, but holds on to 2 fate for the next turn. Yeah. Then has 1 character, declares an attack, and then triple cavalry reserves.
Yeah, but the thing is, on turn 1, absolutely. You get your champion. There's another couple of cavalry guys in your provinces in the bin, and next turn, champion, cavalry reserves, enormous. Just a huge amount of force on the table. Guys go in the bin again. Next turn, whoop, cavalry reserves again. So this is a card that can be potentially problematic. I'm not a huge fan of this card. I'm actually, as time goes on, I'm less a fan of this card than I am of Captive Audience.
Now, there is a trap that can come into this. There is a very dubious card which many people probably shouldn't play because, for greater
Grasp
glory.
of Earth?
No, for greater glory.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We're not the first people to mention this. The first thing a lot of people saw when they saw cavalry reserves was for greater glory. You drop in your cavalry reserves. Most of them are Bushi. You crush a province, and then 1 cost event for greater glory from the line, and you're keeping them all around an extra turn. That's vicious. So you're paying 4, and you're essentially getting 6, 7, 8, 9 worth of fate, essentially, because it's a 6 out of for the cavalry guys, and then another 2 or 3 depending on how many guys you got.
Yeah, I mean,
unfortunately, unfortunately, Andy isn't here to say how bad Greater Glory is this week.
But yeah, and I mean, and that's another kind of slightly minor problem. It's just really hard to see Unicorn and Lion not being in each other's pockets for the foreseeable future, because their cards complement each other so fantastically.
They should have some sort of marriage. It would be perfect.
Yeah, it would be perfect, wouldn't it? But yeah, I mean, you'll have For Greater Glory in an awful lot of Unicorn decks, and you're going to have Captive Audience in an awful lot of Lion decks. So
yeah.
And with the other cards out there, there's not a huge amount of incentive to play anything different. Although I'm sure
Kamoko up a tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
stabbing each other.
There we go.
Let's keep cracking on to a couple of attachments. So favored mounts, 1 military for 1 fate. Give the character cavalry, and during a conflict, bear the attachments to move it to move the attached character to the conflict. Owen, any thoughts on that?
Super good staple.
Yeah.
Super good staple. It's fantastic. Yeah. I mean,
not much more to say. Yeah.
It's super solid. That's what it is. It's one of the better unicorn cards to splash in. A lot of them have feature cavalry as a keyword, and this one hands out cavalry, which is nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, solid as hell.
Okay.
Although the cavalry keyword is more for the unicorn, so they can trigger a stronghold. There are a couple of characters that you're really frustrated don't add. And actually, when you're playing against the unicorn, you are going to be looking for those non-cavalry characters so you can send them home. Because when you send home anyone else, they're coming straight back in. But if you can get one of those courtiers without cavalry and send them home, they are gone home for good.
All right. And Spyglass, a 1 political strength for 1 fate. A Gaijin item, interestingly. First Gaijin keywords. Reaction. After attached character commits to a conflict or moves to a conflict, draw a card. So it seems, very nice synergy with all the movement.
Yeah. Also super good staple. This card is amazing.
Yep.
The fact that it draws cards. Drawing cards saves you honor. We've already seen like Captive Audience loses you an honor, and Unicorn tend to blow through their fate hand fairly quickly. And this just saves you honor. It draws cards. You limit twice per round if you can wangle it, which
not
is
too hard
entirely
for
possible.
yeah.
Not too hard for the Unicorn at all. So it's just great. Really, really good.
And even if you can't wrangle it, I mean, it's still replacing itself. It is still adding, I think it's +1 politics, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you have it on a character who's sticking around more than a turn, every turn you're getting another card draw just from attacking. Yeah. So even without any shenanigans, it's actually quite good.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. And Hida Messenger, 1/2 for 2, conflict character. That's actual term. 0 glory, courtier. Action during conflict. Spend 1 fate. Choose a character you control, and move that character to the conflict. So, I mean, is there a risk that they've just got too much move? They're gonna have too much movement at times, Eoin.
Yes. Yeah.
They're paying for these movement abilities, and more than they need.
She pops down when you need a movement. And that's really the thing, that she's an expensive surcharge at that, but she is a 2-strength courtier, and they appreciate that. So it's not, it doesn't break your heart when you see her. She's not. It's interesting. She's a conflict character with an action, and not a huge number of them have actions because, hey, it's a surprise from hand already. And getting an action on top of that is probably a bit much unless you're paying a significant surcharge. So she's just solid. I think she is redundancy. If you don't have the movement that turn, you spend some money, you need a messenger, she comes out, and you get to start moving. Not cheap though, not cheap at all.
And to use that ability, you're holding over 3 fate, or hoping to pick up some fate from a ring, I guess. Okay, and then let's wrap up the unicorn with the way of the unicorn. When you'd pass first player token, keep it instead. So, how much of an impact does this have in practice, Baz?
Fate. So that's the big first one, that you're getting first pick of the fate that's on the rings, and that is a lot. This card could have easily have just said gain 1 fate, and it wouldn't be too far off. There are
along with first pass as well, you're usually going to be picking up fate as well.
Yeah, true, absolutely. So that in theory is 2 fate, so that definitely makes it worthwhile to do. There are a few other cards that work with it. Obviously, the Machito Wielder is 1 less. The Moto Ute gets plus on the attack. And the Born in War gets essentially an extra +1 if you're attacking on the first one. So it is something that you want to hold on to. But mostly, you just play it every time because you'll get more fate out of it. And more fate means more cavalry, and more cavalry means more crush.
Justin, anything else to say about the way of the unicorn?
No. Baz has said it all. It's what the card does. Very direct.
There was 1 extra card that we haven't properly seen, but did get shown in the Dice Towers review. They had it in the bottom of a card pile, which is a very interesting conflict character that is probably going to get splashed a lot. It is a 1-cost 1/1 with 1, I think. It's an Ayuchi Wayfarer. But essentially, when it comes into play, you get to look at Wayfinder. Essentially, when it comes into play, you get to look at one of your opponent's face-down provinces, and it's a conflict card with 1 influence. So it's a Shigenja with cavalry traits, so it's actually decent enough for the unicorn. But being able to look at someone's face-down provinces is a pretty big thing to bring into the environment, and makes it a really interesting splash.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think that's the first card we've seen that has that sort of ability. Is that right?
Yeah, nothing else that I've seen has interacted with provinces yet.
Down provinces, yeah. Okay, so I think that wraps up Unicorn. Are we going to see Unicorn winner of Gen Con?
They're hard to deal with for a new player. In a game which is already hard for new players. So I can see people being very badly discommoded by their attack pattern. So potentially, yeah. But I mean, I'm not sure who's going to win. I don't think there's any clan that's like, yep, this clan is definitely going to win Gen Con.
Yeah.
I think most of the clans have a shot.
All right.
So yeah,
There is a very specific play style with Unicorn, and I think the players who are playing it will have a good chance of trying to work it out. But if you face against it a couple of times, especially in the core set, there are kind of holes in it that you can work your way in. Especially looking at the characters that don't have Cavalry, they have to attack because they can't be moved in. And then, as I said, when you send them home, and everyone will have some form of send home, they're vulnerable to that. Also, if you're all military and you're not able to draw into that one captive audience that you have in your deck, that's going to be rough. They're not really going to be able to compete in the political side of things, I think, and that's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the added inconsistency of having to run so many non-cavalry unaligned personalities is going to seriously diminish the consistency of their stronghold. So that's another knock against them. Certainly in the games we've played, they seem to have a difficult enough time in single core, I think.
Yeah.
But again, it's a small sample size, and we could be completely wrong. But they haven't been hugely impressive, I have to say. But I think they'll be vastly stronger and constructed.
Yeah.